Okay.
So that brings me to another topic that I wanted to ask you about. Now, can two mid-rangers stay in a marriage together happily? Well, not happily, but can they stay in a marriage together or a partnership?
Well, you'll have certain permutations, of course, between lower mid-range, middle mid-range, A and B, and upper mid-range. But let's take, for instance, two middle mid-range narcissists, either A or both B, or A and B. Being more passive-aggressive, what you're likely to see with those is that there will be a rather cold environment that's good for refrigeration, because there'll be a lot of time where they'll both retreat from one another, and they will both decide, well, I'm the one that's withdrawn from their awful behavior, and therefore I'm the one that's in the right. Or he's off sulking again, what a big crybaby he is. Well, I'll just leave him to it. And then the one who's the crybaby thinks, I can't believe they've been so horrible to me. Well, I'm taking a time out from them. So basically, they retreat from one another. Externally, of course, they maintain the appearances, because they both operate facades of, yes, we have a lovely home and lovely children, and we're both kind people. But behind closed doors, there will be repeated threats to control, which will result in a lot of sulking. There'll be occasional flashes of ignited, heated fury, but for the most part, there'll be a lot of sullen, cold shouldering going on.
Right. A lot of unaware manipulation.
That's right. Absolutely.
So that actually brings me to my next question, manipulation. And I know just from reading some of your material and watching some of your videos that you talk about normals and empaths being manipulative, and they're actually aware of their manipulation, whereas I find it so ironic that narcissists are not aware, or at least the non-graders are not aware of their manipulation. How do you explain that? What do you think that is?
Well, non-narcissists, so narcissistic individuals, normals, and empaths all have the capacity to be manipulative, but they aren't defined by that. Therefore, they are aware when they are doing it, because it's not something that basically their survival rests upon. So there will be instances where they will do it, and they will do so with knowledge. Unaware narcissists are not allowed, for the most part, to know that they're being manipulative, because they have to live by that. That's what allows them to survive and to thrive. And therefore, they can't hesitate. They can't have a delay in the assertion of control and the receipt of fuel, because ultimately it would be a calamity for their survival. So, for instance, as I've explained previously, if I came towards you, Christine, with a sharp stick, and jabbed it towards one of your eyes, you would not do this. HG is coming at me with a sharp stick. That could take my eye out. I will now move my head back and karate chop his stick out of the way. Huzzah! Oh no, it was too slow, because as I thought about doing all of that, HG has now speared my left eyeball. Ouch. Instead, you just instinctively jerk your head back and bat away the stick. Why? It has to happen quickly. Thus, with the unaware narcissist, they have to be able to get that control without thinking about it. Thus, they are not allowed, for the most part, to know that they're being manipulative. Furthermore, if you aren't allowed to know what you're doing, when you're challenged, you can maintain an absolute defense. You're manipulating me. No, I'm not. And they say it with genuine conviction. Because why? Because they don't see that they are. Whereas if they were allowed to know that they were being manipulative, and because they don't have the narc craft and the cognitive function that enables them to do it with the level of the greater or the ultra does, they might hesitate when they're challenged. And what does that then mean? They're losing control, and the narcissism isn't doing their job. So in order to allow them to survive and to thrive, they're not allowed to know what they are. They're not allowed to know that they're manipulating, and they are prevented from that, having that knowledge, in order to give an actual, perversely, honest account of, but I didn't do it. I'm not manipulative. What are you talking about? Which then forms an absolute defense to that threat to control Thus, the narcissism works again.
So the manipulation it's almost inherent in an unaware narcissist. It's like the narcissism protecting them, right?
Yeah. So there might be instances, for example, that an unaware narcissist, he knows that he's diddling somebody out of some money, okay? And therefore, the narcissism allows him to be aware of that manipulation in that instance, because that doesn't pose a problem. But for the most part, the narcissist is not allowed to know that he or she is being manipulative, because if they were fixed with that knowledge, they wouldn't be as fast or as effective to get to the prime aims. So it's, in essence, if you mentioned, like, if there was a god of narcissism, he said to the lessers and mid-rangers, look, before I send you out into the world, you are manipulative, but as soon as you leave these hallowed halls, you'll lose that knowledge. Because quite simply, I can't trust you to do it properly if you know what you are doing. And if you think about it, that many individuals, they will do things without thinking about it. So if you are in the kitchen and you knock a glass, you don't go, oh, I better catch that. You just do it. If you touch something hot, you don't go, oh, that's hot, I better remove my hand.
Yeah.
Pain instinctively causes you. It's all about the speed that's required, you see. And also that defense to any accusation of being manipulative or lying and so on and so forth, to aid the narcissist in their defense. Because it all comes back to that issue of control. The narcissism is a self-defense mechanism to maintain control and to nullify threats to it.
Yeah, and I think it's instinctual in the lessers and the mid-rangers, right?
Yeah, because they haven't been imbued with the same level of cognitive function and narcraft that more evolved narcissists have. So in a sense, it's basically, look, it's going to happen. I suppose a way of doing it would be to take somebody who's a rally driver in a car, okay? Yeah. And basically, rally driver A is good, but he's not brilliant. So a lot of the work done by his car is done by the computer, okay? It does it on his behalf. Rally driver B is exceptional, and he does it knowingly and willingly because he has that level of ability. So the onboard computer isn't utilized either at all, or if it is, very little. So for the unaware, so the rally driver A, much of it's done by the computer to support him because he simply hasn't got the level of speed and skill to do everything.
Yeah, makes sense.
Whereas with the other one, he has, and therefore there is less reliance on the instinctive side of things, and it's fixed with that level of knowledge also.
Are psychopaths manipulative in an aware manner?
Yes.
Okay, so they're different from the middles and the lessers, I guess. And
yeah.
Okay.
Because because that's less based on control and more on a need to do things as a consequence of alleviating boredom and the infliction of misery and pain. So a lot of time you see with a psychopath, it'll be, I wonder what would happen. I wonder what noise a dog makes if I set it on fire. Oh, that's the noise it makes. And they know that what they're doing, but they simply don't care for the dog being set on fire.
Good point about animals and how they treat them. So let's talk about narcissists and animals. So psychopaths have no relation with animals. I mean, they could care less, right? It doesn't matter to them what happens.
I mean, there might be an instance where a psychopath may keep an animal, but is most likely to abuse it. Now, with a narcissist, remember, an animal can provide fuel to a narcissist because it yelps, shows affection by licking and so forth, disgusting as that is. But the narcissist obviously love the animal because there's no emotional empathy. Some narcissists mistreat animals because there's no emotional empathy and they don't operate a facade. Others use a facade of, I look after horses, I look after my dog. And of course, an animal can be a very good way of triangulating a human being. You spend more time with Fido than you do with me. So the wife gets upset. Or, oh, you've let him muddy the carpet again.
Yeah.
And therefore she gets all worked up about that. So an animal is useful for triangulation. It also is a provider of fuel, and it depends upon your subschool of narcissists as to the relationship that's had there. But does a narcissist love the animal? Short answer, no.
So we know narcissists need people. So if for example, there's a narcissist that doesn't have any people for whatever reason, they're they're not able to go out or whatever, are they more likely to take in an animal and kind of just use them as their IPPS in a weird way?
Well, I don't think they would get sufficient fuel to the level of an IPPS or a non-intimate.
Yeah.
Okay. Some narcissists that might be engaging in sexual activity with an animal, or there would be a non-intimate part, the primary source. Okay. But the fuel provision from an animal
is low.
is not as substantial of that as a human being, because they can't talk.
Yeah.
So they will have a look in their eyes, they make a noise, and they can do certain sort of gestures, wagging a tail, or brushing, a cat brushing against the person's legs, but they can't make you a cup of tea. They can't change the bed linen for you, those things. So the amount of fuel that an animal would provide is less.
Yeah.
And obviously they would fit in as a non-intimate secondary source in the fuel matrix, basically as like a friend. So their potency would be moderate. The amount would be moderate. Frequency could be all the time, of course, if they're there as that faithful companion. Yeah. So you might have the instances, and of course, a pet's going to be easier for the most part to control. The problem with a pet is that it needs walking, and it needs feeding, and it needs toileting, and all of those types of things, and grooming. And of course, there are some narcissists that won't do all of that, because that's a form of accountability, and the narcissist may well decide there's no need to do that. So that's when the animal is subjected to neglect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense. I've been wanting to do a little Venn diagram with you on narcissism and psychopathy, and then a couple of other conditions that I think sometimes can mimic certain aspects or behaviors of narcissists. So maybe we should do psychopathy first, psychopaths and narcissists. Is there like that Venn diagram of similarities where they're like familiar behaviors in both? It's hard to differentiate.
Well, yes, both are manipulative. There is an emptiness that is present with both. You have distinctions with regard to fear and anxiety, which are exhibited by narcissists, but not by psychopaths. Narcissists fight against their emptiness. They fight against it. Causes a problem for them, so they have to fill it up. Pure psychopaths embrace it. They are, in effect, content with it. Psychopaths can be more loners, whereas narcissists need people. So there are some similarities, and then there are also differences. Both have no emotional empathy for people. And psychopaths, well, you will get some pure psychopaths that will have considerable narcissistic traits, but you wouldn't say they were narcissists. Then you get the combination of the two, which is what I am, both narcissist and psychopath. And then you get a lot which are narcissists who aren't psychopaths.
Okay. Makes sense. What about like people with high functioning autism? Sometimes people can be mistaken for narcissists, I think, because even though they have empathy, they probably don't show it.
Yes, I mean, I was only talking about this recently, where a lot of it comes down to there'll be singular interactions where somebody with high functioning autism will be indistinguishable from the behavior of a narcissist, because they may both be aloof, and they don't appear to they appear to sort of be indifferent to the impact that they have towards somebody else. But so both can be selfish, but the difference is somebody with high functioning autism is just clueless to it, whereas the narcissist just doesn't care. And they with the there are significant differences, and as I've explained previously, what is important to do is you look at the range of behaviors, and if you do that, you will then see that person A is exhibiting the behaviors of a narcissist, person B, they look like they were, but now you can see that actually when you see more of their behaviors, it's high functioning autism. So for instance, whilst both needed a form of control, with somebody with high functioning autism, they need structure, they need predictability, whereas a narcissist doesn't necessarily need that. In fact, many narcissists are unpredictable, save that they must always have that form of control. But on Monday, they could gain that control by saying that they love you and having lots of sex with you. On Tuesday, they could gain that control by beating you to a pulp. So there's no structure there, save that there is the gaining of control, whereas someone with high functioning autism, they would find the fact of they want to have that structure, they want that predictability, they want almost like the sort of Groundhog Day of they know what's going to happen, and they don't want the unpredictability of things which are unfamiliar to them. And so where there's trigger factors as well, for the narcissist, the response of the narcissist triggered as a consequence of either fuel issues, which is a form of threat to control, or some other threat to control, whereas someone with autism, it's as a consequence of a lack of familiarity. But of course, a lack of familiarity can, at first instance, also manifest as a lack of control to a narcissist. So a narcissist finds himself in unfamiliar surroundings, and that acts as a threat to control. A high-functioning person with autism finds themselves in unfamiliar circumstances and therefore has a reaction to it. But as we get to know that person, we realize, the response of that person, because they're a narcissist, is that the lack of familiarity was actually about control, whereas with the person with high-functioning autism, that lack of familiarity was linked to a lack of structure and predictability.
Yeah, you just pinned the nail on the head. I think with high functioning autism, they need a structured environment to thrive. And in an odd way, I think narcissists need the opposite. They need like a chaotic environment to thrive, wouldn't you say? Where they're kind of trying to get that.
Well, it depends. I mean, many people will say with certain narcissists, it is chaos. It's, thriving on drama.
Creating
more evolved narcissists, there's a different form of the creation of drama. So they tend to have very stable lives, function, run a company, are wealthy. They're not financially haphazard, but what they can readily do is fire a laser targeted missile at someone to make their life chaotic. Their general day-to-day behavior is not that. Mid-range narcissists, they operate the facade. So what you'll see there is externally doesn't tend to be chaotic, or there's just occasional glimpses of it. Behind closed doors, it could well be. Lesser narcissists, those are the ones where you do see a lot more of the explosive behaviors because they don't function with a facade.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also feel like another good distinction between the two is with narcissists, they're usually eventually you see that they have no empathy by their actions, but they're very good with words, right? Because they have that cognitive empathy. Whereas I think the opposite with someone with high functioning autism is their actions actually will show empathy, right? And what they do for you, and they're consistent, right? But they don't necessarily be able to verbalize the emotional empathy as much.
Sure.
What I've seen anyway. Yeah. Okay. I love your input, HG. You're so knowledgeable, and I don't know, you're just you have, I don't know what's in your brain. You have so much in there. It never ceases to amaze me.
There's plenty in there and plenty more to tap.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why I love doing interviews with you. So I have, I just, maybe it's the truth seeker trait in me, but I love getting to the root cause of everything.
Yes.
What I practice in my career, but also just from my interest in mental health.
Yes.
So narcissists have, a lot of people can describe them as being hot and cold, on and off. It's like this roller coaster, right? And that can be attributed to this faulty reward system that they have, like a dopamine reward system. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. We all have it. We all release it. But it seems that with narcissists, there's this problem with it where they need like a really strong peak of a dopamine surge, but then they drop really low, and then they need that dopamine surge again. So it's like that on and off that we talked about. But that on and off of dopamine, like them seeking dopamine, is kind of explains a lot of their behavior, right? So in terms of like some are more prone to having substance abuse, because utilizing those substances gives you the same thing. It gives you that dopamine surge, and then you have that drop, and then you're constantly seeking it again. Or a narcissist that cheats, for example, and is a serial cheater, it's because they get bored, right? They get that initial dopamine surge from the love bombing, and then that drops, and then they need to seek another. So I want to talk to you a little bit about love bombing. But like also future faking is kind of the same thing, right? Where you're anticipating, right? And I think narcissists actually believe it when they're future faking. I don't think they're manipulative in that. I think they actually believe it, but it's, again, the anticipation of something great happening and wonderful, that's that dopamine surge, right? Of, like a spike of dopamine, the anticipation. And then once you get something, it's not so great anymore, right?
I would see there's two things at play there. So let's examine the concept of future faking.
Yeah.
Future faking is the use of the future to control the now. But what's the narcissist getting in the now? Well, control and fuel. So for instance, that narcissist says to the candidate intimate partner, secondary source, person that they're currently love bombing and who is on the fast track towards being embedded as the intimate partner primary source. You're wonderful, you're amazing, you're my soulmate. I can't wait to get married to you. The suggestion of getting married at some future point is a form of future faking. When that narcissist says it, let's say that they are unaware, they honestly believe what they're saying. They're not going, I'm just going to say this because it sounds good. It has to come across as convincing. So the narcissism causes that narcissist to believe that they're in love with this person, they want to marry them, so that way they will, with greater conviction, express those views. And so they say, I can't wait to get married to you. So they are using a future event, marriage, to assert control over this candidate IPSS. The response of that candidate IPSS to that is, oh my, how wonderful, you want to marry me. Oh, I'm so happy, tears of joy start to fall. What is that? One, they are signaling they're under control, that prime haven has been secured. Two, they are giving a lovely blast of fuel. And the provision of that fuel will undoubtedly hit that dopamine requirement for the narcissist and make them feel the sensation that a narcissist experience when fueled. And so where another person gets a dopamine hit from a consequence of having a hug because it's a hug and it feels nice, to the narcissist, the dopamine hit is basically the receipt of fuel and control. And therefore, it comes out of different needs. And what happens, of course, is that the individual who is not a narcissist keeps getting those little hits here and there because they don't need fuel and they don't need control. So if you will, the receipt of hugs is somewhat rationed, not consciously, just it happens that way. But with a narcissist, control is needed now and now and now and now and now. And the fuel requirement continues. So that means the narcissist love bombs because I need to control you and get fuel. I need to control you and I need to get fuel. I need to control you and I need to get fuel. Right. And so with that particular person at the same time, they'll be going bang, bang, bang in the dopamine reward system, so that it basically becomes stale far quicker, which then means the narcissism has to think, right, this person bores us now, i.e. the sensation of their fuel isn't as good as it once was because that's not experiencing the same dopamine reaction. Therefore, it switches to devaluation. This person's let me down. They don't make me feel how they once did.
Yeah.
And therefore, they think this person doesn't love me as much as they once did because they're not making me feel good. It's their fault. Remember that the narcissist can't go, well, I guess I'm not doing enough in the relationship to keep things fresh and spicy. That'll never do because that's a threat to control. Because that would mean that the narcissist is accountable, and accountability equates to a threat to control. So instead, what the narcissism does is basically say subconsciously, we're not getting the same response from this person, i.e. that's the faulty dopamine reward. And therefore, because we don't feel the same about them, that must mean that they are letting us down because it can't be our fault. It has to be their fault. And therefore, that's threatening our sense of control. So we have to nullify that threat to control by punishing this person because you've let us down. You're not making us feel the way that we once did. Why are you being so horrible to me? Then cue, this victim cries, which signals that they're giving a sense of control to the narcissist, and it also provides an alternative form of reward. And therefore, that sensation of fuel is tasty once again, because it's a contrast to what's been going on. If you like, it kind of resets. I've done a video about this when I talk about how much we love strawberry ice cream. And we eat lots of it and lots of it and lots of it until we're sickened by it. And then all we crave is chocolate ice cream. So that's essentially how it would fit together.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dopamine, like I said, it's that dopamine rush is like, it's almost like the anticipation, right? And then once you, like you said, once you've had enough strawberry ice cream, it's not that enticing anymore. But, it kind of makes you, while you were talking, it makes me wonder which came first, the chicken or the egg. Does the narcissism occur that way, and then as a result there's that abnormal dopamine reward, or is there something in the structure of the brain that the dopamine surges peak and then really drop really low, and that's what causes someone to have that I guess lack of control environment to become a narcissist? Because I do think, and this, I mean, the genetic predisposition, and you mentioned this, and the lack of control environment. Well, I wonder when a child is in that situation where they have a parent who's a narcissist, or whomever is a narcissist, and giving that almost like that indiscriminate, reward and then taking it away, or, that hot and cold behavior, right? That's so common with parental narcissists. I wonder if that kind of just affects the brain, right?
I suspect it would do, because you can envisage a scenario where either you have a narcissist that occasionally gives out a form of love. Obviously, it's not genuine.
Yeah.
But does so sparingly. So when that child receives it, it's beyond anything else. Yeah. Because it's so unusual for them to receive it. And then in other instances, it might almost be a kind of reverse, where they're not shown any love and they're badly treated. So in the periods of time when the parent walks past them without hitting them for once, they have a similar reaction, almost a sort of form of relief that makes them feel good. Oh, thank gosh, they didn't hit me. Yeah. And so, and the sensation of either getting those little bits of pseudo love, or those occasions of not being struck or being abused, are so intense of themselves, it might shift the wiring in a particular way, that's part of the lack of control environment, what impact it has on the brain, and creates that need creates the narcissism as part of defending this individual, and creates that framework for fuel and control based upon these different dopamine reward systems.
I agree with you on that. I definitely agree. And we don't have a lot of time left. We have a few minutes, but that I think what you say is correct. It's that unpredictability, right? Of not knowing, am I going to get the love today, or the animosity? But and I think that being exposed to that in that environment makes both narcissists, I think, and empaths are very intuitive to other people's feelings, right? I think they can read people really well. And I think perhaps that might be why, because they're as children, they're in that environment where there's that unpredictability, right? And so I think they learn to kind of almost like walk on eggshells and not know what's coming next. So that I think that gives them the ability to read people really well. When you say, again,
it's a form of survival mechanism, isn't it? Exactly. You need to gauge, is dad in a good mood, a bad mood? What's going to happen here? Do I make myself available and bring in pipe and slippers, or do I scurry off and hide in my room?
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. HG, we've run out of time. However, I would love to continue my series with you because of all the valuable information that you provide.
Absolutely the case. We shall do so, and I look forward to it.
Thank you again.